He mailed me a wedding invitation just to humiliate me. He wanted me to show up broken, beaten, and small. What he didn't know was that I had spent every single day since our divorce building something he would never see coming. If you have ever been underestimated by someone who once claimed to love you, stay with me, because this story is for you. And if you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because we tell stories here that will make your jaw drop and your heart full. Like this video if you believe karma always finds its way home. Now, let me tell you everything. My name is Lyra, and I want you to understand something about me before I tell you what happened at that wedding. I was never a dramatic person. I was never the woman who caused scenes or made speeches or needed the last word. I grew up on a farming property outside a quiet regional town, the kind of place where people woke up before sunrise, worked until their hands hurt, and went to bed grateful. My grandfather used to say that the land never lies to you. You give it care, it gives you life. I carried that with me everywhere I went, even into a marriage that slowly tried to take everything from me. I met Dorian when we were both nobody. That is the part he conveniently forgot later. We were at a trade exhibition. He was trying to sell handcrafted wooden furniture from a small workshop he had inherited from his uncle, and I was there representing my family's produce at a regional business fair. We were both nervous, both hopeful, both eating cheap sandwiches at the same corner table because neither of us could afford the catered lunch. He made me laugh. He had this energy, restless and electric and full of big ideas, and I loved that about him. I thought we were the same kind of people. I thought we were a team. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony with 20 people and a cake my mother baked herself. And for a while, for a beautiful, real, genuine while, we were happy. I managed our household finances with the same care my grandfather taught me about land. I kept our books, handled our supplier relationships, and quietly redirected every spare coin back into Dorian's furniture business. I put my own dream of studying agricultural science on hold. I told myself there was time.
About farming or land or anything that reminded him and everyone else where we both came from. He started calling me plain. He said I didn't fit the image he was building. He told me once, very quietly, as if it were a kindness, that I was an anchor, that I reminded him of a version of himself he was trying to outgrow. I should have left then, but love is a strange, patient, foolish thing sometimes. I stayed. I adjusted. I dressed differently, spoke less, smiled more. I made myself smaller so he could feel larger. And the cruelest part? It still wasn't enough. Then one afternoon, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. I wasn't snooping. I was taking his jacket to the dry cleaner. It was a receipt from a jeweler. A ring. A custom design. I stood in our kitchen for a long time just holding that small piece of paper. And something in me, something very quiet and very old, finally went still. The divorce happened fast. Dorian had clearly been planning it for months. He served me the papers at a dinner with 4 of our mutual friends. I think he chose that setting because he believed I wouldn't react publicly. He was right. I didn't react at all. I just folded the envelope, put it in my handbag, and excused myself to the bathroom, where I sat on the cold tile floor for 6 minutes and breathed. Then I washed my face, went back to the table, and finished my meal. His new companion was a woman named Celeste. She was beautiful in that deliberate, expensive way, the kind of woman who had never eaten a cheap sandwich at a trade fair. She had family money, social connections, and a way of looking at me that made clear she found my existence mildly amusing. She never said anything directly cool. She didn't have to. Her smile did the work for her. Dorian's lawyers were aggressive.
They structured the settlement in a way that left me with almost nothing from the business I had helped build. He had moved assets, restructured accounts, reclassified contributions. I had a lawyer too, but she was honest with me. The paper trail had been carefully managed, and fighting it would take years, and money I didn't.
Here is what nobody knew. What Dorian never bothered to know, because he had stopped paying attention to anything I valued long before the divorce. My grandfather had left me a parcel of land. Not a small one, a significant stretch of regional agricultural property that had been in my family for 3 generations. Dorian knew about it. He had dismissed it completely years ago, waving his hand at the idea when I once mentioned it might be worth developing. He called it dirt. He said the only things that land would ever grow were more problems. So I never raised it again. And I never told him that I had been quietly, carefully managing that land for years, paying the rates, keeping the boundaries clean, running small seasonal crops through a local cooperative. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. Just quietly caring for something I believed in. 4 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a call from a representative of a major agri-export corporation. They had been mapping mineral-rich soil corridors across the region for an organic produce and export program, one of the largest of its kind in the country's agricultural history. My land sat directly in the heart of their target zone. The soil composition, the water access, the position, it was apparently extraordinarily valuable. The kind of valuable that comes with numbers that make you sit down before they finish the sentence. I did not say yes immediately. I called my Aunt Bernadette first. Now, Bernadette is the kind of woman who makes rooms go quiet when she enters. Not because she is loud, but because people instinctively sense that she is the most prepared person present. She had spent 30 years in commodity trading, negotiating contracts across 3 continents, with people who tried every trick in the book. She was 61 years old, wore flat shoes, and had absolutely no tolerance for nonsense. She drove out to the land with me, walked every corner of it herself, then sat across from the corporation's representatives and spent 4 hours renegotiating their initial offer into something that made even their own team look surprised. Within 14 months of signing that agreement, the return on that land deal had surpassed the total value of Dorian's furniture empire. Not slightly, significantly. I want you to sit with that for a moment. The dirt he laughed at, the land he called worth. He was standing near the entrance with a glass of champagne and the fixed smile of a man who had rehearsed being impressive. And then he saw me. The smile did not fade slowly. It dropped. Confusion, then recognition, then something that looked a great deal like fear. I gave him a small nod, nothing more, and I walked inside. What happened over the next hour was not something I engineered. I want to be honest about that. I simply showed up. The rest of it happened because the truth was already in the room. It just needed a place to stand. Several of Dorian's own business guests already knew who I was. The land deal had made regional business news, and Bernadette's involvement had made it credible and visible in exactly the circles Dorian had spent years trying to impress. People approached me. Handshakes, introductions, quiet conversations about supply chains and export contracts and partnership opportunities. I was not the sad ex-wife in the corner. I was the person half the room wanted to speak to. And then came the moment that I did not plan, could not have planned, and which I will never forget for the rest of my life. One of Dorian's most significant furniture supply clients, a man named Gerald, who had been doing business with Dorian for 6 years and was seated in the 3rd row with his wife, stood up from his chair, crossed the room, and shook my hand with both of his, in front of everyone. He announced, loudly enough for the surrounding guests to hear, that I was his company's new primary agricultural supply partner, and that the contract we had recently finalized had, in his words, transformed their entire logistics operation. Dorian was standing 12 feet away when this happened. I watched his face in my peripheral vision.
I did not stare. I did not smile at him. I simply thanked Gerald warmly, asked after his wife, and continued the conversation. Dorian found me near the garden entrance about 20 minutes later. His jaw was tight, his champagne was gone. He pulled me slightly aside, and in a low, controlled voice, he said, "What is this, Lyra? What are you—"
I think about my grandfather sometimes when I walk the land early in the morning. He used to say the land never lies to you. He was right. But I have added something to that over the years. The land never lies, and neither does time. Given enough of it, everything true eventually surfaces. Everything hidden eventually shows. Dorian needed an audience. He always did. For his success, for his cruelty, for his wedding. He needed people watching to feel real. I understand that now without anger. It was always his greatest weakness and his most honest truth. I just needed the land and time, and I used every single second of both. If this story moved you, if you know someone who stayed quiet and kept building when the world expected them to fall apart, please share this video with them right now. They need to hear it. Hit that like button if you believe that real strength doesn't always announce itself. Subscribe to this channel because we have more stories coming. Stories about people who were counted out and came back in ways nobody expected. And leave me a comment below. I read every single one. Tell me, what was the moment in your life when you chose to keep building instead of breaking? I want to know. Until next time, build quietly, arrive loudly, and never, ever let anyone tell you that the land you're standing on is worthless.